How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about Down. This is Season 1, Episode 5 of Into the Dark. Into the Dark was Blumhouse TV's attempt to put a new movie onto Hulu every single month, which they did for about 2 years. This one came out in February of 2019, so this is your Valentine's Day horror movie. This is directed by Daniel Stamm and stars Christina Leone and Matt Lauria. In this movie, two strangers are trapped on an elevator over a 3-day Valentine's Day weekend. They try to escape, and when they can't, they get to know each other, and it becomes a fun little meet-cute story. However, this is a horror movie, and there is more to come in this plot, which will lead to a horrifying escape from this elevator. And let's take a minute to talk about confinement horror. Confinement horror, a few characters, in this case just two, trapped for most of the movie in one spot, an elevator. And there's been quite a few of these, and to be honest, a few other elevator ones as well. The most prominent example that comes to my head is the M. Night Shyamalan produced Devil, which was a group of characters stuck in an elevator and one of them secretly the devil. So we have done confinement thrillers before, we have done elevator horror before, and I do want to say, with confinement thrillers, they kind of feel like a challenge, you know? It does save you a ton of budget, you know, a few characters, one set. Indie films love confinement thrillers, but they are a bit of a pain to write because you have to keep the movie entertaining with a limited scale, and in turn, I almost feel like the confinement thriller is a filming challenge, you know? Fun to see if you can do it and if you can pull it off. And if you do, that is really interesting. This movie, I felt it came out okay. The thing with Into the Dark is there is a varying degree of success among these films. Some come out pretty good, and others kind of stink. This one is somewhere in the middle. It's definitely not the best thing ever, but it's not the worst, and it's a fine middle entry for Into the Dark. And the thing is, the flaw is not the confinement thriller section. The confinement thriller is really fun. You know, the idea of a meet-cute within this confinement thriller and getting to see these characters interact, there's a sense of levity behind it, you know, as they start to joke with each other and play fun little games, and it starts to work pretty well. But then you get to about the halfway point, and to be honest, I don't even think it's the halfway point, and the movie tips its hand way too far, way too fast. There's a really obvious twist, and I was really hoping this wouldn't be the movie's twist because it was so obvious, and to be honest, I'd rather have a movie have a ridiculous twist. You know, why not the devil show up again in this movie or something? I'd rather have the movie have a ridiculous twist than an obvious twist. And I was like, please don't do that, please don't do that. But here we are at the halfway point. The movie does its obvious twist, and it feels like it kind of gives up on the confinement thriller thing in favor of a more standard horror movie. It is still pretty confined, but it's not as good. And I'll elaborate on why I didn't like the second half more as we get deeper into the analysis. But I do want to say, and the clearest example of how I can explain why the second half's worse is I'm watching the movie, I get to the second half, and I only make it about 10-15 minutes before I decide, pause this, I'm gonna go to bed, I'll finish it in the morning. And then of course it takes like 2 or so days for me to actually come back to it. But yeah, no, I lost a ton of interest when this movie tipped its hand too early. It could have still done this twist and done this sequence, but not at the halfway mark. We still got a ton more movie to go. This really should have been saved to the last act, preferably save it till the climax, have it be something that happens like 15 minutes before the ending, but we went to a different movie that I wasn't near as interested in. And I you know how when someone changes the TV channel on you and you're like, hey, I was watching that? That's what I felt like with this movie. And I don't want to say it's the worst thing ever, but yeah, it just kind of got disappointing there. Anyway, without further ado, let's talk a little bit about the plot. I'm not going to be doing any major spoilers, but I do want to say my piece on a few plot points and make sure you guys have a basic understanding as to what the plot's about, and I will stop and do some analysis and explain further why I really didn't like the second half as much, but no major spoilers. Let's go ahead and dive in. We open up with this woman. She is a busy businesswoman. She has a good job at a high-up floor on this big building. And it's Friday, and they're faced with a long weekend. Valentine's Day is Saturday, which also means that today was Friday the 13th, but also Monday is President's Day, so 3 holidays right next to each other. I don't know if Friday the 13th is really a holiday, but I count it. But they get a long 3-day weekend, and she has plans. She's gonna get on a plane, go see her ex-fiancé, and win him back. She gets on an elevator, and another guy steps on the elevator as well, and they have a bit of some small talk. You can tell the guy's trying and she's not really leaning too hard into it, but after a bit of small talk, they get past the bottom floor and into the parking garage layers, and the elevator cuts off. Now, because they're underground, their phones aren't getting any reception, so they can't call and ask for help. And even though there's a little help button on the elevator, you know that's gonna be broken. And in turn, they're stuck together. And being stuck inside the elevator, you have to try every way out. So there's a bit of, trying to escape, going and pushing on the ceiling, and you have to stand on the guy's shoulders, trying all the different buttons, and, trying to pull the doors open with your hands. And you do get some survival stuff, which I think is interesting, but it's not super prominent, like, oh, I just so happened to grab some candy out of a bowl. Now this is like our only thing to eat for 3 days. And I was going to give a client this bottle of wine. At least we have some fluids to drink, So I did like the survival element, but I really realized trapped in an elevator for only 3 days. Elevators are scary, like when you're going between the doors and you think it might drop, or if you're on the shaft outside of the elevator. But really, the box itself, for shorter than 3 days, isn't that scary for survival. So yeah, it's not the most survival-y of survival movies, but with that, you do get the relationship aspect making this movie a little bit better, They start to get to know each other, they play games, they have paper, so they start to draw pictures of each other, and they tell fun little stories, and they get to understand who each other is by telling the stories. And, I really do have to say, doing a confinement thriller is really like trying to keep the balloon up in the air, and having these little games and stories really do keep you interested, and the actors, you can tell, are really giving it their all, especially the guy telling all these little jokes and bringing a sense of levity. You can tell he's kind of nervous and trying to make her laugh, which I thought was really fun. But then we get the other half. The other half, the movie tips its hand early, and it really did feel like it gave up on the challenge that a confinement thriller was supposed to be. Confinement thriller, you're supposed to see if you can work with minimalism, and then they threw in this twist that happens way too early, and there's a few things like a fight sequence or running up the elevator shaft, and it did have some good moments, I don't want to lie. There is one kill that is pretty fun in here, although it's missing the Tom Savini special effect that would have nailed it. And there are some funny moments when the villain is revealed. There is some over-the-top acting, so it wasn't all bad. It just stopped feeling like the confinement thriller that I liked. The new movie, because it really does feel like a different movie, is darker and grimmer and more serious, and I really did like that sense of levity that the old movie had, but the humor just kind of drains out of it, and you can tell they're trying to have a wacky villain and keep that up in the air, but it just doesn't have the same tone, you know? And whenever you change a movie this drastically, there is a certain amount of risk behind it. For example, From Dusk Till Dawn did change drastically at about the halfway point there, and that worked for that movie, but this one, it didn't really work, you know? It's hard to get an audience hooked, and then to change completely and try to keep the audience hooked, plus knowing the twist reveal. Really, a lot of things that keep me hooked in movies are mysteries and questions, and once the twist reveal was answered, I didn't really feel like this movie had any mystery left in it, and I didn't feel as compelled to watch it, especially because it is such an obvious twist reveal. And like I said earlier, if they had hanged this off till closer to the climax, I would have preferred if this entire last half of the movie was instead just the last 15 minutes or maybe the last act, but still, it's not. And there's also several plot contrivances to get the movie to stay going for this long, you know? There's one scene where you're like, the villain's not gonna be dumb enough to fall for that, No, he is. He is going to be dumb enough to fall for that. And there's like a way the villain's disposing of stuff, but towards the finale of this movie, he chooses to dispose of something in a completely different fashion just so the movie can go on longer. And yeah, it's just frustrating little moments like that. There's one scene in the second half where a character starts going on about the elevator screws randomly, and you think it's going to lead to something clever, and the clever revelation is just, I can smash at the ceiling with my thermos. The second half, it just, you know, there are some fun chase moments, there is some fun bits of intensity, but it felt like it abandoned the challenge, the confinement thriller challenge that it started out with. It abandoned the movie's levity, you know, this sense of, haha, we're trapped in an elevator, this is kind of funny and awkward, the whole point of the movie, and this charming little small movie that we started out with gave way to a generic horror movie with definite logic issues just to keep the movie going, and it was a twist that was so obvious that giving into the obvious twist and then tipping your whole hand to all the mystery at about the halfway point of the movie, it just really lost my interest. And I don't want to say the second half was the worst thing ever. There are some fun moments, but no, it didn't work for me. But like I said, this isn't the worst Into the Dark ever. I felt like it kind of fell flat when it tried to give us the standard horror movie it thought we wanted. Don't give up on your main theme. I don't know, maybe that's just me. But anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my Hulu playlist, where you can see my reviews for past episodes of Into the Dark. You should be able to find the first 4 episodes of each season in there, as well as the Hulu movie Prey, a sequel to or a prequel to Predator. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Hulu playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.